The great hall floated in the darkness between stars, a structure so ancient that most species had forgotten who built it. Its walls held the memory of 1,000 wars, 1,000,000 treaties, and countless warnings that went unheeded. Today, those walls would witness another mistake in the making. Elder Mothic's tentacles trembled as he called the emergency session to order. His species had survived for 12 million years by being careful, by listening, by remembering. The other elders assembled before him represented the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Each had learned the hard way that some knowledge came written in blood. "They have been spotted again," Mothic announced, his voice carrying through the chamber's translation field. "The humans. 3 of their ships passed through the outer rim last cycle. They are expanding faster now." A heavy silence fell over the council. The elders exchanged glances that spoke of shared nightmares and ancient fears. They all knew the stories. They all remembered what their ancestors had recorded in the forbidden archives. Elder Sisrith, whose snake-like body coiled around her floating chair, spoke next. "The silent protocol must hold. They must not know we watch them. They must not feel threatened." "Threatened?" The voice came from the back of the chamber, young and sharp with contempt. "You fear these primitives? These apes who only just learned to travel between stars?" The speaker was Ambassador Krell of the Vakran Empire. His blue-scaled face held nothing but scorn as he pushed his way to the center of the hall. The Vakran were newcomers to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 3,000 years ago. They considered themselves the galaxy's new power, destined to rule. Mothic's ancient eyes fixed on the young ambassador. "You do not understand what you speak of, Krell. Your species is young. You have not read the old warnings." "Warnings written by cowards," Krell snapped back. "I have seen the reports. The humans are weak. They have a small fleet. Their worlds are barely defended. They focus on trade and art and philosophy like soft children. And you," he gestured at the assembled elders, "you treat them like they are made of fire." Elder Gronthar, whose rocky form had weathered 8 million years, rumbled to life. His voice sounded like mountains grinding together. "Let me tell you a story, young Krell. It happened long before your people climbed down from your trees, long before most species in this galaxy existed." The ancient being's eyes glowed with memory. "There was a race called the Precursors. They seeded life throughout the galaxy. They uplifted species and guided civilizations. They had technology that would seem like magic even to us, and they were terrified of one species they created." Krell rolled his eyes but said nothing. "That species came from a world of constant death," Gronthar continued. "A planet where the weather could kill, where the animals hunted in packs, where diseases constantly evolved, where even the plants developed poisons. The Precursors made a mistake. They put their own DNA into this species, making them intelligent, creative, adaptable. Too adaptable." Sirith picked up the story, her forked tongue tasting the air. "These beings learned to work together despite being individuals. They learned to plan for seasons ahead. They learned to make tools, then weapons, then art. The Precursors watched them with growing horror. These creatures didn't just survive their death world. They conquered it. They domesticated the animals. They bred the plants. They even fought the diseases and won. The Precursors saw what would happen if such a species reached the stars," Mothic added. "So they tried to stop them. They sent plagues. The species developed medicine. They sent predators. The species made better weapons. They tried everything short of complete extermination. Nothing worked. The species grew stronger with each challenge." Krell shifted uncomfortably. "What happened to these Precursors?" "They disappeared," Gronthar said simply. "But before they vanished, they did one last thing. They took this dangerous species and moved them to a corner of the galaxy. They erected a barrier that prevented them from developing faster than light travel. They created a quarantine zone. And they left one warning in the deepest archives. Do not let them out. Do not rouse them. They are evolution's perfect survivors." "You speak of myths," Krell protested, but his voice held less certainty now. "The humans are those survivors," Mothic said quietly. "The barrier failed 2,000 years ago. They found space travel on their own. And now they spread through the stars just as the Precursors feared." Elder Vornell, who had been silent until now, spoke with a voice like wind through crystals. "We have observed them carefully. They seem peaceful now. They trade fairly. They avoid conflicts. They make art and music. But we know what sleeps beneath that peaceful surface. We have seen their history. Their history? Krell asked despite himself. They fought each other for 10,000 years, Vornell explained. Nation against nation, tribe against tribe. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire world. They split the atom and immediately made it into a bomb. They reached their own moon and planted flags, claiming territory. They are warriors pretending to be shepherds. Sereth's eyes fixed on Krell. They survived ice ages. They survived supervolcano eruptions. They survived asteroid impacts. They survived diseases that killed half their population. And each time they came back stronger. They learned. They adapted. They remembered. The silent protocol exists for a reason, Mothak said firmly. We do not threaten them. We do not provoke them. We let them expand peacefully. We trade with them carefully. And we never ever give them a reason to remember what they are capable of. Krell laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the ancient hall. You are all fools. You fear shadows and old stories. The Vakran Empire will not cower before primitives. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have the strongest fleet in this sector. These humans you fear so much control perhaps 20 systems. We could crush them in a single campaign. You must not, Mothak said, his voice heavy with dread. You do not understand what you would unleash. I understand perfectly, Krell said, turning toward the exit. I understand that you are weak and we are strong. I understand that you hide behind ancient fears while the galaxy moves forward. The Vakran Empire will do what must be done. We will show the galaxy that humans are nothing special. Krell, please, Sisrith pleaded. At least study their history before you act. See what they did to each other. Imagine what they would do to an outside threat. But Krell was already leaving, his footsteps echoing through the hall. The Council of Elders has become the Council of Cowards. History will remember the Vakran as the empire that refused to be afraid. After he left, the elders sat in heavy silence. Finally, Mothak spoke, his voice barely a whisper. He will not listen. He will attack them. Then we must prepare, Gronthar rumbled. The galaxy will soon remember why the precursors were afraid. The galaxy will learn what happens when you give humans a reason to fight. Vornell's crystalline form shimmered with sorrow. They survived the culling wars. They evolved on a death world. They turned extinction into motivation, and now someone will force them to remember what they are. In the archives deep below the council chamber, ancient files remained sealed, files that showed human wars in terrible detail, files that recorded weapons humans had built to fight each other, files that the elders hoped would never be relevant. Those files would be opened soon, and the galaxy would wish they had listened to the warnings. The sky over New Horizon burned. Sarah Chen watched through her kitchen window as the first orbital strike hit the agricultural district. The explosion bloomed like a terrible flower, orange and red against the morning blue. The ground shook. Dishes fell from shelves and shattered on the floor. Her daughter Maya screamed from the bedroom, "Mommy, what's happening?" Sarah ran to Maya and pulled her close even as her mind struggled to understand. New Horizon was a farming colony. They grew crops. They raised livestock. They had no military installations, no weapons factories, nothing worth attacking. Why would anyone bomb them? The emergency sirens began their wail 2 minutes too late. Sarah's communication device burst to life with frantic messages. The local militia was calling everyone to shelter points. The colony administrator was trying to organize evacuations. Someone was shouting about ships in orbit, about weapons fire, about incoming dropships. Through the window, Sarah saw her neighbors running. Old Mr. Peterson fell on his porch and struggled to get up. The Martinez family was loading their children into their ground car. In the distance, another explosion sent a mushroom cloud rising into the sky. "We have to go," Sarah whispered, grabbing Maya's hand. "We have to go now." They ran outside and Sarah joined the flow of people heading toward the community shelter. She recognized all these faces. Tom the baker, Lisa who ran the school, young David who had just graduated. These were her friends, her neighbors, her community, and someone was killing them. The dropships appeared like metallic insects descending from the clouds. They were dark blue and covered in weapons. As Sarah watched in horror, they began firing at the fleeing civilians. Energy beams cut through people like they were nothing. Bodies fell. People screamed. The Martinez family's car exploded in a ball of fire. Sarah pulled Maya behind a building, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. They were farmers. They were peaceful.
Why was this happening?
A voice boomed from the dropships, amplified and cold. It spoke in broken human language. Surrender. You are property of Vakran Empire now. Surrender or die. The militia appeared then, brave and desperate. 200 men and women with hunting rifles and outdated military weapons. Facing an invasion force with advanced technology. They fought anyway. They died anyway. Sarah watched Thomas Rodriguez, who had taught her daughter in school, fire his rifle at a Vakran soldier. The soldier's armor absorbed the bullet easily. The soldier's weapon did not miss. The community shelter was 200 meters away. Sarah ran with Maya, keeping to cover, praying to any god that might listen. Other families were doing the same. Some made it. Many did not. Inside the shelter, 3,000 people huddled in the darkness. The emergency lights cast strange shadows on walls that had been built to protect against storms, not war. Children cried. Adults tried to be quiet and failed. Everyone jumped at every distant explosion. Colony Administrator Jackson stood on a platform, his face pale. I've sent distress signals to Earth and the other colonies. Help is coming. We just need to hold out. How long? Someone shouted. Jackson hesitated. The nearest military ship is 3 weeks away. 3 weeks. Sarah held Maya tighter. They had enough food and water for a month in here. But would the Vakran wait that long? They did not. 6 hours after the attack began, the shelter doors buckled inward. Vakran soldiers poured through, their weapons raised. They wore full armor that made them look like blue demons. Their faces, when visible through helmets, showed scales and cold eyes. Out, they commanded. Everyone out! The colonists were herded into the central plaza like animals. Sarah kept Maya close, trying to shield her daughter from the sight of bodies in the streets. The Vakran had been efficient. Buildings burned. Vehicles lay destroyed. The beautiful park where Maya played was now cratered and smoking. A Vakran commander stood on a platform flanked by guards. He was larger than the others, with more elaborate armor. When he spoke, his voice came through translators. You are conquered. New Horizon belongs to Vakran Empire. You will work for us. You will obey. Any resistance will be punished with death. An old man, braver than most, shouted back, Why, we did nothing to you. We're just farmers. The commander's scaled face showed something that might have been amusement. You are human. That is enough. The galaxy will learn that humans are not special. You are weak. You are prey. The commander gestured to his guards. They grabbed the old man and dragged him forward. What happened next made Sarah cover Maya's eyes, but she could not cover her own. Could not stop herself from seeing. The message was clear. Obey or die. That night, locked in what used to be the school, Sarah held Maya and tried not to think about the future. Around them, other survivors did the same. They had lost everything in a single day. Their homes, their freedom, their loved ones. But Sarah's communication device, hidden in her jacket, still had power. And before the Vakran had jammed all signals, one last message had gotten through. She had seen it flash on her screen in the chaos. Distress signal received. New Horizon, we hear you. Earth hears you. Remember us. Avenge us. The message had come from David Kim, the colony's communication officer. Sarah had watched the Vakran drag him away hours ago. He had sacrificed himself to send those words. His last act had been to make sure humanity knew what happened here. In the darkness, Sarah whispered to herself. They'll come. They have to come. She did not know if she believed it. New Horizon was far from Earth, far from the main colonies. They were a small settlement of farmers and families. Would humanity really go to war for them? Above the school, Vakran dropships circled like vultures. In orbit, their warships broadcast their victory across the galaxy. They showed images of burning buildings and surrendering humans. They proclaimed their superiority. They warned other human colonies that resistance was futile. The message reached Earth 3 days later, traveling by faster-than-light relay. It reached Mars, Luna, Titan, the Belt colonies. Every human settlement in known space received the same transmission. The images of New Horizon burning. The count of the dead. 2.3 million people, mostly civilians. Men, women, children. Killed in a war they never asked for. The Vakran expected fear. They expected other human colonies to surrender without a fight. They had studied humans and found them soft, peaceful, conflict-averse. They expected begging and pleading. They got something else entirely. On Earth, in the halls of the United Government, Old files were opened. Emergency protocols were activated. The phrase "Remember New Horizon" began appearing everywhere. On signs, in messages, spray-painted on walls. It spread like fire through the human worlds. Sarah Chen did not know any of this yet. She sat in darkness with her daughter, surrounded by the defeated and the grieving. She did not know that her home's destruction had changed everything. She did not know that the sleeping giant the elders feared had just been awakened. All she knew was that her daughter was alive, that she herself was alive, and that if they could just survive long enough, someone would come for them. Someone would remember, someone would avenge. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Admiral James Hawthorne was drinking coffee in his office at Fleet Command when the alert came through. He had been reviewing routine patrol reports, thinking about retirement, wondering if he would spend his last years watching a galaxy at peace. Then his screen filled with fire and death, and everything changed. He watched the footage from New Horizon 3 times. Each time felt like a knife in his chest. The burning buildings, the bodies in the streets, the children crying, the Vakran commander calling humans weak. The final count flashing at the end, 2.3 million dead. His hand shook as he set down his coffee. His other hand reached for the communication panel. Within minutes, every military commander in the solar system was on the line. Within an hour, the civilian government was in emergency session. Within a day, humanity spoke with one voice. They would answer this. The President of the United Earth Government stood before the cameras, her face hard as stone. She was a grandmother who had spent her career avoiding conflict, seeking diplomatic solutions, building bridges between species. Now she spoke words that would echo through history. The Vakran Empire has committed an act of war against humanity. They have murdered millions of innocent civilians. They have ignored every law of civilized conduct. They have shown us who they are. Now we will show them who we are. She paused, her eyes reflecting a fury that billions of humans felt in that moment. To the Vakran, "You wanted to see if we were weak. You are about to learn the answer. To our people on New Horizon who still live, we are coming. Hold on. We will not abandon you. And to the galaxy that watches, remember this day. Remember what happens when you attack humanity." The broadcast ended, and then the transformation began. Admiral Hawthorne returned to his office to find it flooded with reports. The shipyards at Luna had shifted to war production. Every ship under construction, whether military or civilian, was being retrofitted with weapons. The massive orbital factories that built cargo haulers were retooling to build warships. On Mars, the weapons laboratories that had been quietly maintained but never fully used were now operating at full capacity. Scientists who had spent careers studying propulsion and energy production were now applying that knowledge to weapon systems. The research stations that explored peaceful applications of antimatter were now making antimatter warheads. The recruitment centers were overwhelmed. Every able-bodied human wanted to join the military. Retired veterans came back. Civilians volunteered. Even the colony worlds far from the front line sent their young people to fight. The waiting lists grew so long that temporary camps had to be established just to process everyone. Commander Rachel Park stood in the recruitment center in New Seoul and watched the crowds with tears in her eyes. She had served 20 years and thought she had seen the best of humanity. Now she was seeing something more. These people were not scared. They were not hesitant. They were angry in a cold, determined way that reminded her of old stories about her ancestors. A young man stepped up to her desk. He could not have been more than 18. "I want to enlist," he said simply. "Did you see the footage from New Horizon?" Rachel asked. "Yes, ma'am. My cousin lived there, Lisa Chen. She was 7 years old." Rachel looked at the boy's face and saw the same expression on a million others. Not hate, not rage, something colder, something more dangerous. Determination. "We'll get them," she promised. "We'll make them answer for every single life." The boy nodded. "I know we will, ma'am. That's why I'm here." In the orbital shipyards, Chief Engineer Marcus Stone watched as his civilian cargo hauler was transformed. They were adding armor plating, installing weapons hardpoints, upgrading the engines for combat maneuvers. His beautiful ship, designed to carry grain and goods between the colonies, was becoming a warship. "How long?" Admiral Hawthorne asked, visiting the yard. 3 weeks to retrofit this one," Marcus replied. "But Admiral, she's not a military vessel. She won't be as good as a real warship." Hawthorne looked at the ship and then at the 100 others being modified in yards across the system. "She doesn't need to be perfect, Chief. She just needs to be there. We're not building a fleet, we're building an avalanche." The civilian vessels were not the only ones being prepared. The military ships that had patrolled human space for decades were receiving upgrades, new weapons, better shields, faster engines. The admirals opened the classified archives and pulled out weapon designs that had been developed but never deployed. Kinetic kill vehicles, electromagnetic pulse bombs, nanite swarms. Weapons that had been considered too dangerous for peacetime were now exactly what they needed. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo worked in a laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface. She had spent her career studying Vakran biology, part of the peaceful scientific exchange between species. Now she applied that knowledge differently. She knew their anatomy, their biochemistry, their weaknesses. "I need you to understand something," she told the military officers who came to her lab. "What you're asking me to do. These are weapons that target specific biology. They won't harm humans. They won't harm other species. Only Vakran." "Can you do it?" they asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes, but it goes against everything I believe in. Everything I worked for. They killed 2.3 million of us, Doctor. Civilians, children. They did it to prove a point." Sarah closed her eyes. She thought about her oath to do no harm. Then she thought about the children of New Horizon. "I'll do it," she said. "God forgive me, I'll do it." The intelligence networks, maintained quietly for decades, suddenly expanded. Human agents who had been living peacefully on other worlds began gathering information. They mapped Vakran fleet positions. They identified supply lines. They located command centers. They did it carefully, quietly, waiting for the order to strike. Agent Michael Torres sat in a bar on a Vakran border world, pretending to be a traitor. He listened to Vakran soldiers boast about their victory. They laughed about the weak humans who had died so easily. They planned which colony to attack next. Michael smiled and bought them drinks and laughed at their jokes. Inside, he memorized every word, every detail, every piece of intelligence that would help his people destroy them. The transformation of humanity took weeks, but it felt like days. The civilian population that had been focused on art and trade and peaceful expansion suddenly remembered skills their ancestors knew. They learned to ration. They learned to work longer hours. They learned to sacrifice for the war effort. In homes across human space, families gathered around screens to watch the updates, the ship counts rising, the volunteer numbers growing, the weapons being deployed, and always the same phrase appearing again and again. "Remember New Horizon." Admiral Hawthorne stood in Fleet Command 6 weeks after the attack and looked at the display showing human forces. Where there had been perhaps 100 military vessels, there were now over 1,000. Warships, armed merchants, converted civilian craft all ready to fight. And more were coming online every day. The other species watched in amazement. The elders watched in recognition. They had seen this before, in ancient records. A peaceful species pushed too far, transforming into something terrifying. The Vakran Empire, confident in their victory, sent demands to other human colonies. Surrender, submit, become part of the empire. They expected fear. Instead, they received a message from Admiral Hawthorne. It was simple, direct, and broadcast across the entire galaxy. "You attacked New Horizon. You murdered our people. You called us weak. You wanted to prove something to the galaxy. Congratulations. You succeeded. You proved that even peaceful species have limits. You proved that humanity remembers. You proved that we don't forgive those who harm our children. We are coming for you. Not because we want war. Not because we seek conquest, but because you left us no choice. Remember New Horizon. Because we will never forget." The message ended. The human fleet began to move. Ships from Earth, Mars, Luna, the Belt, the outer colonies, all converging on the Vakran frontier. It was not a navy. It was a tidal wave of metal and fury and cold determination. In the refugee camps on New Horizon, Sarah Chen heard about the fleet. She held Maya and whispered, "They're coming. They remembered us." And across the galaxy, the elders watched and knew. The ancient warning had been ignored. The sleeping giant was awake. The Vakran had wanted to see what humanity could do. They were about to find out. The Vakran frontier station detected the human fleet 3 days before it arrived. Commander Zekthar watched his screens with growing concern. The sensors showed not dozens of ships, but hundreds. They were not coming slowly or cautiously. They were coming fast, in perfect formation, like a hammer falling from the sky. He sent an immediate message to the Vakran High Command. Human fleet approaching, size much larger than expected, requesting reinforcements. The response came back within an hour. Hold position. Reinforcements coming. Humans are weak. Their ships are inferior. You will defeat them easily. Zekthar looked at his crew of 80 Vakran warriors and then at the 300 ships bearing down on his position. He had fought in a dozen campaigns. He knew what he was seeing. This was not a fleet. This was vengeance. When the human ships arrived, they did not bother with communication. They did not demand surrender. They simply opened fire. The frontier station lasted 4 minutes. Admiral Hawthorne watched from the bridge of the UES Retribution as the station exploded. He felt nothing. No satisfaction. No remorse. Just cold focus on the next objective. All ships proceed to target Beta, he ordered. Remember the plan. Fast strikes, no mercy. No prisoners until they surrender completely. The fleet split into attack groups. Each group had a target. Vakran military bases, supply depots, communication relays. They hit them all simultaneously, giving the enemy no time to coordinate a defense. Commander Rachel Park commanded a squadron of retrofitted cargo ships. They were not pretty. They were not sophisticated. But they worked. Her ships dropped kinetic weapons from orbit onto a Vakran weapons factory. The factory ceased to exist in a matter of seconds. Target destroyed, she reported. Moving to next objective, this was humanity's strategy. Not one big battle. Not a slow siege. Fast, overwhelming strikes across multiple systems. The Vakran had military protocols designed for traditional warfare. Humanity was not fighting traditionally. Captain Wei Zhang led a stealth mission into Vakran space. His small ship, painted to avoid detection, carried a team of human marines. They infiltrated a Vakran command station, downloaded their military databases, and planted explosives. They were gone before the Vakran knew they were there. The information they stole revealed fleet positions, supply lines, and communication codes. Within hours, that information was being used to devastating effect. The Vakran tried to respond. They sent their fleets to intercept the human forces. But the humans did not fight fair. They used the asteroid fields as cover. They hid ships in nebula clouds. They dropped mines in expected patrol routes. They used every trick humanity had learned from centuries of warfare on Earth. The first major battle happened in the Kronos Nebula. The Vakran Third Fleet, 50 warships strong, moved to intercept the human advance. They were confident. Their ships were newer, faster, better armed. They outnumbered the human force they expected to face. Admiral Hawthorne was counting on that confidence. The Vakran fleet entered the nebula, expecting to find a small human force retreating. Instead, they found 300 human ships waiting in ambush. The nebula's radiation had hidden them perfectly. Commander Drakmore of the Vakran flagship realized his mistake too late. It's a trap. All ships defensive positions. But there was nowhere to go. Human ships emerged from the clouds on all sides. They fired kinetic weapons that did not care about energy shields. They launched missiles that swarmed like insects. They coordinated their attacks with precision that spoke of centuries of military doctrine. The Vakran fought back bravely. Their weapons cut through human shields. Their tactics were sound, but they were surrounded, outnumbered, and facing an enemy that fought with cold fury. Lieutenant Marcus Chen piloted his fighter through the chaos. He had never been in combat before New Horizon. Now he flew with skill born of intense training and burning purpose. He saw Vakran fighters and hunted them without hesitation. His weapons found their marks again and again. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vakran Third Fleet no longer existed. 30 ships destroyed, 20 captured. The survivors surrendered, their will broken by the ferocity of the human attack. Admiral Hawthorne accepted the surrender personally. He looked at the Vakran commanders through the video link and saw their shock. "Why do you fight so hard?" one of them asked. "It was just one colony. Just one world." Hawthorne's face showed no emotion. "It was ours." "They were ours, and you made the mistake of thinking we would forget them." The captured Vakran were treated according to military law. Given medical care, given food and shelter, processed as prisoners of war. The humans did not torture them, did not abuse them, but they did not let them forget why they were prisoners. Each cell had a screen showing images from New Horizon, the burning buildings, the dead civilians, the children crying, and beneath each image the same words, "Remember New Horizon." News of the defeat spread through Vakran space like wildfire. The Third Fleet had been one of their best. If humans could destroy it so easily, what else could they do? The Vakran High Command called for reinforcements from their allies. They sent messages to the dozen species that had agreed to support them. They expected help. Instead, they received silence. The other species remembered the warnings from the elders. They watched humans fight and saw something terrifying. Not rage, not chaos, but organized, efficient, unstoppable warfare. This was not a species having an emotional breakdown. This was a species that knew exactly what they were doing. Ambassador Krell, who had dismissed the elders' warnings, stood before the Vakran Emperor and tried to explain. "The humans are fighting harder than expected, Your Majesty. They have more ships, better tactics. They are not like the reports said." The Emperor's scales darkened with anger. "You told me they were weak. You told me one attack would make them surrender. I believed the intelligence of your beliefs have cost us 3 fleets. Our allies abandon us, and the humans keep coming." Krell had no answer. He had been so certain, so confident. Now he watched his empire crumble under human assault and understood too late what the elders had tried to tell him. The human advance continued. They liberated worlds the Vakran had conquered. They freed species that had been enslaved. And everywhere they went, they left the same message. "We do not seek conquest. We seek justice." Dr. Sarah Okonkwo's biological weapons were never used. The military commanders decided they were too dangerous, too indiscriminate. But the Vakran did not know they existed. The threat alone was enough to make them afraid. The psychological warfare was devastating. Human forces broadcast messages into Vakran space, not threats, just facts. Lists of battles lost, ships destroyed, systems captured, and always the reason: this is for New Horizon. In the occupied zones, Vakran soldiers began to desert. They saw human forces approaching and ran rather than fight. They had heard the stories, heard how humans fought, heard how they did not stop, did not tire, did not forgive. On New Horizon itself, Sarah Chen and the other survivors heard the sounds of battle above them. The Vakran guards were panicking. They talked in their own language, but the fear was universal. Then the doors burst open and human marines poured in. Not Vakran, humans, their own people. The soldiers wore armor marked with Earth's symbol and the words, "Remember New Horizon." "We're here to take you home," the sergeant said simply. Sarah collapsed to her knees and cried. Maya clung to her. Around them, other survivors did the same. They had survived. They had waited. And their people had come for them. The liberation of New Horizon took 3 days of fierce fighting. The Vakran garrison fought desperately, knowing what would happen if they surrendered, but they were outnumbered and outfought. When it ended, the colony was free. The cost had been high. Human casualties were in the thousands, but they had achieved their objective. New Horizon was saved. Admiral Hawthorne stood in the ruins of the colony's central plaza and looked at the survivors. They were thin, tired, traumatized, but alive. That was what mattered. "We did not forget you," he told them. "We will never forget you, and neither will the galaxy." Behind him, the human fleet prepared for the next phase. They were not done. Not even close. The Vakran Empire still stood, and humanity's message was clear. Until justice was served, the war would continue. The sleeping giant was awake, and it would not rest until the job was finished. The Vakran homeworld had never been touched by war. For 3,000 years, it had been the center of an expanding empire. Its cities gleamed with wealth taken from conquered worlds. Its people lived in comfort built on the labor of others. The idea of enemy ships in their sky was unthinkable, until the day it became reality. Admiral Hawthorne's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 500 warships, 200 support vessels, and one clear message sent directly to the Vakran government. This is Admiral James Hawthorne of the United Earth Forces. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Evacuate all military installations. Prepare to face justice for your crimes. If you refuse, we will remove your military capability by force. You have 1 hour. The Vakran Emperor sat on his throne and stared at the message in disbelief. They were here, at his homeworld. The humans he had been told were weak and frightened. They were here, and they were demanding his surrender. We must fight, his military advisors urged. We still have the home fleet. We still have orbital defenses. We can hold them. But Ambassador Krell, his scales dulled with shame, spoke different words. Your Majesty, we cannot win. We have lost every major engagement. Our allies have abandoned us. Our occupied territories are in rebellion. If we fight here, they will destroy us completely. They would not dare attack a civilian population, the Emperor insisted. The galaxy would condemn them. Krell's laugh was bitter. We attacked their civilian population. 2.3 million of them. The galaxy condemned us, and now they watch to see what happens. The elders tried to warn us. I was too proud to listen. We have awakened something that should have been left alone. The hour passed with no response from the Vakran government. Admiral Hawthorne gave the order he had hoped to avoid. All ships target military installations only. No civilian centers, no residential areas. We are not them. We are better than them. The bombardment was precise and devastating. Orbital defense platforms exploded. Military shipyards collapsed into debris. The home fleet, outnumbered 3-1, fought bravely but uselessly. Within 6 hours, the Vakran homeworld was militarily defenseless. But still, the Emperor would not surrender. Commander Rachel Park led a ground force into the capital city. They moved through streets filled with frightened civilians. The Vakran people who had cheered their empire's conquests now faced the consequences. But the human soldiers did not harm them, did not loot their homes, did not take revenge on the innocent. Secure the government buildings, Rachel ordered. Anyone who surrenders is to be treated as a prisoner of war. Anyone who fights dies. Make the distinction clear. The Vakran Imperial Guard fought to the last. They were brave warriors who believed in their empire. They died defending a government that had led them to ruin. The humans honored their courage even as they defeated them. In the throne room, Emperor Vakshir finally understood his mistake. Human marines surrounded him. Their weapons were raised but not firing. They waited for him to make a choice. Admiral Hawthorne entered the room and looked at the Emperor without expression. Your empire is defeated. Your military is destroyed. Your allies have abandoned you. Surrender now, and we will show mercy. Continue to resist, and we will remove you by force. The Emperor's scales shifted through colors that showed his emotional turmoil. Rage, fear, shame. Finally, resignation. He removed his crown and placed it on the ground. I surrender. The Vakran Empire surrenders. But tell me, human, why did you fight so hard? Why did you come so far? We only destroyed one of your colonies. You have ended our entire civilization. Hawthorne's voice was cold but steady. You killed 2.3 million of our people, men, women, and children who never threatened you. You did it to prove you were strong. You were wrong. Strength is not measured in how easily you can kill the innocent. It is measured in how far you will go to protect them. The surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. The Vakran Empire, which had conquered 100 worlds, fell in 3 months to a species they had called weak. But the war was not truly over until justice was served. The trials took place on neutral ground, overseen by representatives from every major civilization. The Vakran commanders who had ordered the attack on New Horizon faced their crimes. The evidence was overwhelming, the footage undeniable, the verdict unanimous. Sarah Chen testified at the trial. She stood before the galaxy and told them what happened. How she watched her neighbors die. How her daughter cried in the darkness, how they were treated as less than people by an empire that valued conquest over compassion. "I want you to understand something," she said, looking at the Vakran commanders. "You did not just attack a colony. You attacked families, communities, dreams. And you did it because you could. Because you thought no one would stop you. You were wrong." The sentences were harsh but fair. The commanders faced life imprisonment. The emperor was exiled. The Vakran Empire was dissolved. Its conquered territories granted independence. War reparations would be paid for generations. The Vakran people, stripped of their empire but not their dignity, faced an uncertain future. Many humans called for harsher punishment, but Admiral Hawthorne spoke against it. "We did not fight to become conquerors," he said. "We fought to protect our people and ensure this never happens again. The Vakran Empire is gone. That is enough." The Council of Elders convened again in their ancient hall. This time, human representatives were invited to attend. Elder Mothak looked at Admiral Hawthorne with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. "We tried to warn Ambassador Krell. We tried to tell him what would happen if humanity was provoked. He did not listen." "Why didn't you tell us directly?" Hawthorne asked. "Why the secrecy?" Isreth's forked tongue tasted the air. "Because we feared you would see it as a threat. We feared that knowing we watched you, studied you, prepared for you, would itself provoke the response we sought to avoid." "You were afraid of us," Hawthorne realized. "We were cautious," Grunthar corrected. "The precursors created you, and then feared their creation. They tried to contain you. They failed. We learned from their mistake. We chose to observe, to hope you would remain peaceful, to leave you alone." Elder Vornell's crystalline form shimmered. "We knew your history. We saw what you did to each other during your wars on Earth. We saw the weapons you created, the tactics you developed, the determination you showed, and we hoped, desperately, that no one would force you to use those skills against the galaxy." "Someone did," Hawthorne said simply. "Yes," Mothak agreed. "And now the galaxy has learned what we already knew. Humanity is kind until given a reason not to be. Humanity is peaceful until forced to fight. And when humanity fights, it does not stop until justice is achieved." The elders formally acknowledged humanity as a guardian species, one of the few civilizations trusted to maintain peace and defend the innocent. It was an honor that came with responsibility. "Other species will test you," Sisreth warned. "They will look for weaknesses. They will probe your defenses. How will you respond?" Hawthorne considered the question carefully. "The same way we always have. We will trade fairly. We will seek peace. We will respect others. But we will also remember New Horizon. We will never forget what happens when someone mistakes our kindness for weakness." The meeting ended. The elders departed. Humanity took its place among the galactic powers, not through conquest but through proven resolve. On New Horizon, reconstruction began. The buildings were rebuilt, the fields replanted, the memorials erected. In the central plaza, where the Vakran commander had once stood and called humans weak, now stood a monument. It bore the names of every person who died in the attack, all 2.3 million of them, and beneath the names a simple inscription: "They thought we would forget. They were wrong. We are humanity. We remember. We endure. We protect our own. Let this memorial stand as a warning to all who would threaten us. We are kind until you force us to be otherwise." Sarah Chen visited the memorial every day. She brought Maya, who was slowly recovering from the trauma. They stood together and remembered friends who were gone, neighbors who had died, a peaceful life that had been stolen. "Will there be another war, Mommy?" Maya asked one day. Sarah looked at her daughter and then at the stars above. Up there the human fleet patrolled, watching, ready, but not aggressive, not seeking conflict, just prepared for it. "I hope not, sweetie. But if there is, We'll be ready. That's what we learned. That's what the galaxy learned. We don't start wars, but we finish them. Admiral Hawthorne retired a year after the war ended. He was celebrated as a hero, but he did not feel like one. He had done what needed to be done, nothing more. He spent his last public speech not boasting about victory, but warning about the cost. We won, he told the gathered crowd. But victory came with a price. Thousands of our people died in the fighting. Millions died in the initial attack. We must never forget them, and we must never let their sacrifice be in vain. We must remain vigilant. We must remain strong, but we must also remain who we are. Kind, compassionate, peaceful, until someone gives us no other choice. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.